All right, so good morning. Hopefully everybody was able to get into the Linux refresher course. If you had troubles getting into that course, should be this one here, the 220F 322 Linux refresher. Should have been just a real short course, take you through the Linux Unhatched curriculum, which is just a real short Linux reminder. Hopefully, if you've taken this class, you've already taken my Linux class, but you might be a summer removed or more, and so hopefully you can come in here and get that content. Content was fairly simple, fairly straightforward. You got to play a little bit with the virtual machines. Obviously, ignore all my clicks here because I haven't clicked on it on this particular window. But you guys should have had something very similar to this, with the content over here on the left and then the actual virtual machine over here on the right-hand side. So hopefully you're able to make it through this content. There won't be any grades or anything out of here. There is a quiz and such associated with this one. I won't necessarily be using this assessment here. It's mostly just to make sure that you remember everything that came in from Linux coming in prior to this. Then you also should have been able to get into the CyberOps section. If you weren't able to get into the CyberOps section, just let me know. I transferred all the students over here from the refresher over to the CyberOps, so you should be able to get access to that. And inside the CyberOps, you'll have access to the modules, which you'll see this course content here. So when I click on CyberOps Associate course, this is going to launch all the content. So this is all your reading material for the semester. Over here on the left-hand side, you'll see there's 28 modules. They just broke it up into much more modules. So as I sent out a message before, they recently updated this exam, which means they updated the content, and they added a bunch more modules, but it didn't really add more work. They just split everything up into smaller sections so that you could easily identify what the topic was that was being covered. So don't let 28 modules freak you out. It's not as bad as it sounds. And the list or the order of those I've updated on the syllabus. So you'll come back here to the modules. You'll see that all the module exams, these will start getting released on the week that they're due. And it's going to cover multiple modules. So you'll see the first one covers module 1 and 2, modules 3 and 4. This will correlate to the week itself. The ones that are bigger, for example, like network fundamentals here is 5 modules. I think I cover, or ends up being 6 total. I end up covering the first half of this, and maybe in 1 week, and then in the second week, we cover the second half, and that's when the exam's due. So how to know when everything's due? If you come here and look at the syllabus, you will see that I've updated all of this, but mostly each section here. So you'll see each of the different modules that are going to be due on each week, or at least the topics that we're going to be covered. To know what's actually due during that week, you'll want to reference back to Blackboard, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Notice that I sent out an announcement, week 13, I'm leaving that to be determined, as we usually need a buffer week somewhere in here, especially with COVID and some other things going on. It's nice to have that extra buffer week. If we don't end up needing this buffer week, it's just more time for you to go back and make sure that you have all your labs done. It's another reason I build that week in there, is so that you have plenty of time to catch up on labs if you get behind for some reason. We will try to do a skills-based challenge as well as the exam, and then that last week you'll complete the course feedback and review. As far as overall in the grading, the chapter labs are going to be worth 40%. There is a lot of labs in here. Only the ones that I assign on Blackboard are going to be the required ones. So if you miss a couple labs, you probably won't be hurt. Just know that in my class, as long as you email me relatively before Sunday night at midnight, right? So Sunday night at midnight is when everything's due, whether it's labs, whether it's an exam, whatever I have listed in Blackboard, it's just Sunday at midnight. If you're not going to make that date, life happens, you've got to take care of a sick kid, or you've got a job that's pushed you over that you're not going to make it on time, whatever it may be, just email me. That's all I ask, is that you email me. If you email me, I will generally give you an extension unless there's some reason why I cannot give an extension on that particular assignment. So as long as you email me, contact me, it's not going to be as big of a deal. Everybody here is in college. I'm going to treat you like adults. You know, real life happens. So I'm pretty flexible. If you've had my classes, the only thing I ask is that you shoot me an email so I know what's going on. This is the rest of the breakdown for all the quizzes, or in this case, the exams. They did remove the quizzes, so as I mentioned, if you got an earlier copy of this syllabus, make sure you go out and grab the latest copy up here at the top. The Zoom meeting, obviously you guys were able to find this. This should be the link for the entire semester. So every Monday and Wednesday at 9 a.m., this link should allow you to jump into this, this Zoom meeting session. I will record these sessions, and that way people that aren't able to attend and the online students can also get access to it. As I mentioned to those that were here a little bit earlier, you're more than welcome to ask questions during these sessions. If you don't feel comfortable talking over the voice, you're more than happy to send them in the group chat, and I'll address them anonymously, kind of thing there if you've got questions. But you're always welcome to come off mute and ask a question there as well. All right, so that should get you the layout for here. You notice that I posted some certification information. I did get a couple of questions about this already. The certification has been updated. You are now part of the newest certification. That's one thing that I changed in between here, as I wanted to go ahead and push you to the new certification. The old one expired in May, so the new one starts now, and you guys should be able to study for that. This course will prepare you for this certification. All the labs that we do in here, all the training materials, etc., should get you a pretty good start to this exam. One thing I would recommend, and I'll list some extra materials here in the cert information folder. For example, extra books that are just, you know, recommended reading materials if you're wanting to be in this type of field, that kind of thing. Nothing's required that you have to go purchase. But if you look like you want to go ahead and continue to explore this cert, I encourage you to kind of read through those materials. And I'll get those posted up here as I get more data coming in. Also for the certification, some of you have asked, yeah, there's usually a discount code or certain % off or something like that at the end of the semester. Once that information's posted, I'll make sure to get that in the certification information here. Anytime anything changes here on Blackboard, I usually try to send an announcement, especially with the layout that we have this semester. Is the announcements are going to be extremely important, so pay attention to those. Which will take any of these weeks. So the way I broke this up is you'll see week 2 all the way through, you know, 16 going on out. In week 2, I will always have this overview up here at the top, and that overview is going to tell you what is due for this particular week. So if you're one of those students that likes to stay organized, what is it I have to get done this week? This is where you're going to go look and see what is due. So in Cisco Netacad, and note that we both will use Cisco Netacad as well as Blackboard. I wish there was a better way to do that, but honestly, this system seems to work. I've had a couple semesters with it this way, and never seem to have very many issues. So in Cisco Netacad, I'm asking you to read Module 1, Module 2, and then you're going to complete the exam for Module 1 and Module 2. Now, when you complete that exam, my recommendation as far as a week would be try to read these modules. Note that you have access to those reading modules at any time, right? So if you come in here to CyberOps course, you launch this, and then you see Module 1, Module 2, you can read those at any time. You're not going to wait for me to have to release that data. I would recommend reading those if you can before class. If there's 2 modules, generally what I'll do is break it up for the Monday and Wednesday session. So today will all be about the danger. Wednesday will all be about Module 2. If there's more modules in one week, then I'll either divide them up between the 2 days or split them up accordingly, depending on the amount of material. All the recordings are always going to be just like the class time. So the class runs till 10:15. So if I'm not done by 10:15, we'll shut it down and we'll pick back up on it on Wednesday. For Blackboard this week, I will have the PowerPoints out there, which is what I will cover during these meetings, and I'll go into a little bit more depth and different topics. But you're welcome to review those PowerPoints ahead of time, or you can just come to this class session. And then down below, we're going to be the lab files. This week, there's 3 of them. So what you'll do is click on these Word documents, you'll fill them out, and then submit them back here. So if you come back here, click here, and then submit, then you should be able to upload your assignments. Later on, there'll be much more hands-on assignments. The first couple chapters here within CyberOps is getting you in the mindset of what cyber security is and cyber education and what it is to be a CyberOps associate, etc. So don't get discouraged with that. There will be a lot of hands-on labs that will come up as we go. When we start working on NetLab Plus, which is a real live virtual machine environment, you guys will get forms that will come up here, and I'll tell it, it'll be called a lab report or a lab form. I'll show you how to fill those out in a later video when those come available, and then you'll submit them here just the same. So whether this is a document that tells you what the lab is, or if it's a lab report form, you just click on it, download it of it, and you're good to go. I will put some additional labs in the optional lab stuff. This is completely optional. You don't have to do them, but I always get students in this class that want some additional labs, want some additional materials that they can try against. So you can always click on these different case studies and go. Because of the sheer amount of labs, there's, Cisco provides 50 labs for this course. It's a lot of labs on top of what we actually do on Cisco or on NetLab Plus. So I really try to just limit the labs that really make the most sense. And then if you want more, I'll throw them over here in the optional lab section. All right, I think that covers the first part of that. So again, this week we'll just be reading The Danger as well as Module 2 here, The Fighter's War Against Cybercrime. And then today what we're going to cover is just the danger portion of this. So let me start that up here. All right, so the idea behind this particular module is just going to explain why networks and data are attacked, why people might, threat actors is a real key topic and a real important objective. And that basically explains the motivations behind these people that are going to be trying to infiltrate different systems and different attacks. So there's lots of rogue stories out there. Hackers are always trying to set up rogue access points, and then they pretend to be genuine ones. This is also known as the evil twin, as the curriculum likes to describe it. You guys have probably all seen this. If you've gone to a hotel, you see a bunch of hotel access points you think are the right ones, but they're not the right ones. And so what they're getting you to do is jump on their wireless access point and start trafficking normal data like you would. And we used to do this when I was in my master's program. We would do this just to test and on ourselves, and we wouldn't hurt other victims. But we would prove ourselves by doing just this. We would go and throw up a random access point, usually with our laptop, but sometimes we use physical wireless access points. And you would get people to join your network, and they would unknowingly not only join your network, but they just start browsing the internet or maybe checking their bank account real quick or something like that. And we're recording all of that data. We're recording all the packets that come in. We're recording everything that goes through that access point. And you can do that with little things like a Wireshark with just a line tap coming off that access point. But sometimes we're more nefarious and we're actually recording not only packets coming through there, but we're breaking into things like SSL, etc. That's more common today, but back when I was going through that, SSL and SSL certificates, they weren't all that popular. A lot of things were just trafficked over plain HTTP. Some of the biggest ones that we hear today are about ransomed companies. Ransomware is pretty hot and heavy. It's still pretty big. It's actually seen a huge decline here. From what I've seen in the last, I'd say about a year, but I think that's a lot because of other things that are going on. But the idea is that ransomware is installed on employees' computers, then I can go through and gather all the data I want, and then go and encrypt all of their corporate data. And by encrypting their corporate data, they're going to have to pay me in order to get the key to release that. Now, a lot of people say, you know, like even if I pay them, they're never going to give me the key back. Well, it's in their financial interest to give you the actual key to decrypt your data. The last thing they want to do is be known for not paying when, you know, or not giving the key back after they've been paid. Otherwise, more and more people wouldn't pay. So they're usually, believe it or not, the quote honest criminals, where they usually give you back the data after you've made your payment. That payment can vary depending on who they hold hostage. So whether it's the city of Atlanta or whether it's your little small, you know, 5-person mom and pop shop, everybody gets attacked by ransomware. We also see things like targeted nations, and this is one of the popular ones that you'll talk about or read about in the curriculum there, mostly by nation states. So a lot of times, you know, the biggest, most popular one in recent years was Stuxnet. And so Stuxnet, which is what they're talking about down here, was basically an infected USB drive that was designed to infiltrate Windows operating systems, and then it targeted Step 7 software, which was software that was developed by Siemens for their programmable logic controllers. And the idea is these programmable logic controllers are what controlled the nuclear devices and the items that were going on during this nuclear power grid. And so they infected those and shut them down. And it was a way of a rogue nation state or a rogue group being able to shut down a arms race that was going on during a particular time. But that same type of attack could be done on our power grid as well as our water system. Everything now is being computer controlled. It's usually by off-grid systems. In other words, they don't have access to the internet. However, you always have the human being, and that's the reason such things like Stuxnet was able to work, was they were taken by USB drives that were then infected, plugged into an off-grid system, and now all of a sudden you're able to infect those systems. You're not necessarily able to retrieve data back, but if you write the malware or the worm proficiently, you can actually, you know, do all your attacks without having to physically be there and or physically interact with those type of programs. You guys will be able to watch this video. It's in the curriculum or in the module there. And that will take you to a lab that's installing the virtual machine. Now, I've already got some emails about this one too. You do not have to install VirtualBox on your own machine. You don't have to download the CyberOps Workstation Virtual Machine. If you choose to do that, you're more than welcome to do that. However, again, I will be providing pods on NetLab Plus, and so you'll just be able to use the NetLab Plus login. The requirements, system requirements, in order to pull off the CyberOps course and all the virtual machines that are required is pretty heavy. Most people don't have those kind of laptops or desktops available at home. So it's not required that you download these. I will make them available on NetLab. Hopefully, I believe most of you should have used NetLab here. The only ones that wouldn't would be potentially my graduate students that are taking this as a prereq. But if you've taken any of the other courses in Cisco, you guys have used NetLab at some point in order to interact with physical Cisco gear during your Internet Working 1 or Internet Working 2 days. So I will get you access to that. You don't have to worry about installing this virtual machine. The lab on the case studies, this is just going to talk about the labs that you guys are going through. So I'm going to ignore my first couple slides here, which takes us to our threat actors. So threat actors, as we mentioned before, is kind of a glossary term that you'll need to be familiar with. And the idea is that these are individuals or groups of individuals who perform these cyber attacks. So this could be just amateurs, could be the guy in his mom's basement, it could be the hacktivists, it could be organized crime groups, state-sponsored groups, terrorist groups. Most of them have the intentional malicious act in order to negatively impact some individual or some organization. Most people don't just necessarily hack for the fun of it, especially because it's a lot of work. It's not as easy as the movies make it seem to be. And later when you guys are working with some hacks and stuff like that, you know, it takes some work in order to get in there. But a lot of times, most of it has some malicious act or some malicious intent. They're trying to steal your personal information. They're trying to steal your, company secrets, whatever might be in there. It could be as simple as stealing your client database, and just so that they could sell it to another company and be able to collect money based on that database. So it's going to go through here and it's going to tell you the difference between them. Most of your amateurs, script kiddies is another big term that's out there, which basically means they have little to no skill. They find existing tools and instructions and then attack that. So while script kiddies used to be looked down upon and oh, you're just a little script kiddie, you're going to find somebody else's tool and use it. Well, since when I first started in cybersecurity, we had things, there was Kali Linux, which used to be called Backtrack back then. And it had some tools, but it didn't have very many tools. I mean, you had to really be pretty proficient in what you were wanting to chase. There was software that was nothing more than trying to get you organized in order to do that attack. But the software itself didn't actually perform much of the attack. It was just to keep you focused. Now with Kali Linux that you have today, it is loaded with tools. And so being a script kiddie is not necessarily a bad thing. What you got to remember is anybody can download Kali Linux and start using it to attack your infrastructure or attack your system. And because there's so many tools out there, they don't necessarily need to even know how they work. They just go and run them and test them and see if they work. They can later dig into code if they are, nefarious enough to get that far. But a lot of times it's just going to be people running tools that they found on the internet. So as you guys go out and you are in full-time jobs, it's important that you guys have a practice of going through and doing your own pen testing on your own networks and your own systems. Obviously, you're going to need to get permission to do this from whoever you're doing, or if you're standing up your own, etc. But you want to make sure that at the bare minimum that you're doing just simple little script runs, in-map scans, etc., which we'll get covered in later in this semester. But making sure that you do that. Anything that you learn in this class, and that's one thing everybody had to go through and read, was the ethical hacking side of things. The tools that you learn in this class can be destructive, but the idea is that we're training you on these tools so that you can identify when you're going to be attacked and the type of tools that they'll be using to attack, right? So you kind of have to learn how to do the attack so you know how to prevent the attack later on. So please, when you're working with these tools, be responsible about it. Don't go hammering out on the internet. Don't use it on your company network. Don't use it on the school network. I will build you more than enough environments where you can sit there and tackle at it. If you really get interested in this and you really just want a playground, you're trying to do something just to learn, let me know. I've got tons of different playgrounds that I can put you in, especially with different tools. And not to plug it, but there is a student organization on campus, the Cybersecurity Club, where they get to do this all the time. They will train students on doing additional things that I can't get to in the classroom. They will also take you a little bit further and allow you to play in different environments. So if you're interested in that particular group, just let me know. I'd be happy to get you in touch with them. I do help run that as well as another professor here. And we do a lot of things. We're trying to go to competitions, etc. But the idea is that you're more than welcome to explore. Just do it in a sandbox environment that we can give you all sorts of holes to go and chase. All right. So off that soapbox, we'll talk about the hacktivists. These are usually the ones that have some kind of protest going on. They generally attack, and as it says down below there, is your DDoS attack. So this is generally that distributed denial of service, but they can do all sorts of different things in order to mess with you. Financial gain, we covered that a little bit, ransomware being the most popular version of that, or just selling your personal data as a whole, and then your trade secrets. Mostly here you can think of this as either nation states hacking other countries, which China and Russia and just about everybody is hacking anybody at any point in time. We see a huge increase lately of China attacking a bunch of United States pharmaceutical companies. And most of that right now is for the COVID vaccine. Everybody's trying to get the COVID vaccine. So we see a lot of attacking going on, just simply trying to get the formulas that people are coming up with for those vaccines. So just real quick, let's see here. I assume this will let me do this, maybe not. No, we don't have hands in this particular room. But I'm assuming most of you are familiar with Internet of Things and what Internet of Things is. So many of you, and most of you guys that have grown up have interacted with this from the day you were born. It's just firsthand, right there. It's your daily life. And I kind of saw the progression of how Internet of Things have come up. When I was younger, I didn't get my first computer till I was 12. Like, it was really rare for people to have computers. And then as part of that, there was no real Internet of Things back then. We're talking the old dial-up internet speeds and things like that. So to see the real proliferation of IoT today, and now with my sons, I have two boys, they're just ingrained in this. All they've ever known is internet here. My oldest son, who's about 14 now, he's just about, on the cusp of that. He didn't see it when he was super young, but my youngest boy, who's 9, he definitely has seen this all the way through. And so IoT is going to be a part of everybody's life, as it's mentioned in there. I think there's like 20 billion some devices on there now by 2020. Most of these things, when they were originally being built, it was just push them out and get them out. The firmware wasn't designed with you being able to update it. It wasn't even designed with you being able to do a lot of things on that firmware. It was just cut and fast, make it quick. I used to build a couple of these little IoT devices, and they weren't all that complicated. All you were doing was using little microprocessors and putting a little bit of code to turn off and on a light, and now all of a sudden, you've got this huge IoT device. But the size, the data size that's available in those microcontrollers is extremely small. So unless they wrote some bootloader or some way to upload that firmware, it can't even be updated. And so a lot of times what you're seeing here, they were developed with patches, but they can't even be patched. And so a lot of old IP cameras and sensors and things like that are out there in the known, and people don't even know that. They think that it's just updating itself, which is the way most of it's done today. However, they can't even get updates. There's no possible way for them to get updates. So you'll do a lab, and there's a lab there. I believe it's in the optional labs. It'll take you through how to research and analyze an IoT application vulnerability. I don't know that I assigned that one. We'll have to take a look here, as all the names are kind of running together. But some key things or terminology you're going to need out of this particular section of it. The PII, I think everybody's familiar with PII at this point. But it's any information that can be used to positively identify an individual. For example, your name, your social security number, birth date, credit cards, etc. Generally, you try to get lists of these, and it's usually sold on the dark web. And I've explored the dark web, and they're right. I mean, it's readily available. You can go get a whole list of names and credit card numbers with social security numbers and birth dates. All that information is just being harvested all the time. And the bigger the list, the more you pay. Some of it's going to be usable, some of it's not going to be usable. So you really want to protect that information as best as you can. And a lot of times it's used to set up, fake accounts, credit cards, etc. in your name. One of the other major ones that's important is going to be your EMRs or your electronic medical records. Those also contain protected health information, which is a subset of PII. You also have PSI, which is just your personal security information. This is all your usernames, passwords, and security-related information. So if you guys have done this, you guys know a little bit about passwords. I'm assuming you know how to do better passwords. Make sure that they're long, that they're sentences. They're not just words and variants of leet language where you're replacing E's with 3's and stuff like that, that it's a little more complicated than that. The longer the password, the better. And everybody always says, well, how am I supposed to remember a long password? Make it a phrase that you won't forget. Make it something about what you're doing. And keep your passwords different. If you use the same password across the internet, The moment one gets used or is taken or compromised, they will now immediately try that on every website they can get access to with your email address. And it happens a lot. I used to have it happen quite a bit. You know, I was young, naive, 14 years old. The internet wasn't that big back then. And I got multiple passwords stolen back then because everybody just stored them in clear text and it wasn't that big of a deal. Obviously, within the last 20 years, it's changed quite a bit. Let's see, on the lost competitive advantage, you know, companies losing their data, etc. It's not much to that particular one. On the politics side, though, and the national security, you know, it's not just businesses that get hacked. State-supported hacker warriors can disrupt the destruction of vital services, and that's a lot of times what's being done by national security is they're just trying to disrupt your daily life. For example, look at COVID. Look how quickly one little virus disrupted everybody's life. We went from, you know, never wearing masks in this country to everybody must wear a mask. Everybody immediately had to work from home. Now imagine a denial of service attack on your local ISP, just shutting down your local ISP. How would that disrupt your daily life? You went from working in an office and then they went and made everybody work from home. But if there's an attack on the ISP, now everybody that's working from home is being able to be attacked. Because everybody's working from home, not everybody was able to get a VPN up or a virtual private network up to protect that company data coming back into the corporate network. They had to get them up and running. They had to get them up and running fast. And so a lot of companies, especially little small contractors, started hiring lots and lots of cybersecurity analysts. I personally know one that's hired almost 2,000 contractors. That was only a 50-person company. Now have 2,000 contractors coming in just simply because of the inflow of everybody working from home and trying to keep everybody secure. So the jobs and the type of things that you can come out of this class with are not only were they growing before, but now based on everything that's happening with people working from home, the jobs are all over the place, and people really need people that can identify when things are going to go bad or when things are being hacked. This is one of the labs that you guys will do, so visualize the black hats, which will kind of take you through how they prevent and how they mitigate an attack. So I'll let you guys go through that on your own time. And so to kind of wrap up this particular module, the main thing that you guys want to remember is that term threat actors. And remember that threat actors are not limited to, but they are, you know, amateurs, hacktivists, organized crime groups, state-sponsored, and terrorist groups. This will probably show up on your exam. They talk a little bit about evil twin hotspots. Remember, this is just you standing up your own, you know, Super 8 hotspot next to the hotel. Everybody jumps on yours thinking they're on the right one, and they're not. IoTs, make sure that you guys understand what IoT or Internet of Things are. This could be anything from webcams to routers to light switches, electrical outlets, etc. And then we talk a little bit about PII, and that's one to be the main things that we're going to try to protect over time, obviously, is PII, PHI, your medical records, as well as your PSI, which is your usernames, passwords, and other security-related services. So that's the end of what the PowerPoint has out there today. Sometimes during this class, depending on what we're doing, this will be the generic format that we'll go through. So I'll cover this, but a lot of times in other chapters, we're going to go into much more deeper detail, etc. I just wanted to run this first one through today to kind of get a feel for how it would flow, especially in this online environment. And then also, again, like when we get hands-on with some of these labs, we'll be doing live reservations during the meeting time as well, and getting more hands-on with those virtual machines. So remember, the Cisco virtual machine that they're talking about in here, the CyberOps Workstation, you're welcome to download it and you're welcome to set it up. However, just remember that that's a little more than what most PCs need. There's a lot of RAM and software involved. And so later on, I will get you on our lab system here at Fort Hays. I'll get everybody an account on our Fort Hays NetLab system, and then you guys will be able to have access to those virtual machines. Right now, I know those labs are about to be updated for the new content that just got released. So I'm kind of dragging a little bit to make sure that you guys get the latest and greatest content. That should be up here within the next week or two, especially since in the next week or two, we're just focusing on other topics that we can cover here that they're not necessarily going to be the real hands-on stuff. Does anybody have any questions over how the course is going to flow, what the requirements are, anything like that?
So the labs that are in Blackboard for this week, will those be done through Cisco then?
No.
The net
So
again? No.
These three labs that are here, you just simply click on the document. You'll download it. Just do it here for now. And so you'll go through here and it's going to have you fill it out. They're going to have you watch this particular TED Talk. And then based on that video, you fill out these answers. You'll resubmit this lab. So you'll save this Word document, click here, and then you'll submit it up on this computer. That's the way these first couple ones are going to be. So they'll either be in this format where they'll have you go do some quick research out on the internet. And these labs don't take too terribly long. Again, I'm cutting down on the number that you guys have to end up doing. There used to be a ridiculous amount last semester, and that didn't work out well for anybody. So all these labs will be done here. There are some packet tracer labs. If we do get packet tracer up or we decide to use those labs, again, you'll see that information inside these individual modules. But in the first couple chapters here, they're just trying to get you to think like a cybersecurity analyst and understand what it means to be a cybersecurity analyst. Does that answer what you were going for there, Michael?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, so again, in the first couple of weeks here, if you look at the curriculum lineup for what we're going to be covering, just come back over here. You'll notice that we'll see the dangers and stuff like that. They say installing these virtual machines, and you can click that. Just know that, you know, you could download these VirtualBox, and then you can go and get these as well. You don't have to stand these up. I will give you an environment that has all these on NetLab. But if you want to play with this on your own home local machine, you're more than welcome to do that. And then we'll cover these fighters, and then we get into an operating system overview. So we'll go back, we'll cover things that are important to know in Windows as well as Linux. The Linux side of things you guys should be familiar with, hopefully after that refresher course. And then we really do a deep dive into protocols. So the first couple weeks of this course is designed to give you a refresher of everything that you've probably learned in your undergrad program. So most of you that are taking this particular class are taking it as your quote unquote capstone course, which is the last course that you have to take in the cybersecurity lineup. Some of you may have taken a little earlier, some a little later. Some of you may be doing it for graduate side of things. But the idea is that we're going to do a refresher of all the Linux you learned, Windows you learned, the network protocols, and everything that you've learned along the way, because all of that's going to be really important when we actually get deep dive into the protocols. We won't have time to go back and, you know, explain again what was TCP/IP, that kind of thing. So we really do that in the first couple chapters here, make sure everybody's on the same playing field, and then we jump really deep into the security network. To be honest, the way cybersecurity works is, you know, this used to not be a degree, right? Most of you guys are joining the degree for the first time. And the only way you got to be a cybersecurity type person was doing something like all of the Cisco networking courses, and then going into operating systems and doing these individual degrees. And now you're doing everything in one degree, taking you from A to Z, where you may not know anything, learning all the networking, learning all of the operating system stuff, and then starting to get into the analyst side where you can determine what are actual attacks as well as attacking things yourself. So this is a very, I guess I'll call it a fast-paced course. Don't get, drug in the weeds in the first couple weeks during the review. Trust me, you will want the review, because when we start diving in towards the end, it's better that you understand what's going on versus feeling really lost. In the last semester, I had a bunch of students that thought, the first couple of weeks were really slow, nothing's going on. And then when we hit in the weeks with the cybersecurity stuff, they didn't remember the protocols. They didn't remember the Linux commands. Well, it's because they skipped over it thinking that it was not needed. And then when they got to those sections, they started to struggle. So take your time, work your way through it. It's really, really good content. Without me babbling on, that's probably the best I can say there. Anybody else have any other questions? All right, so I'll go ahead and end this recording, and it'll be made available on Blackboard.